Do you know who he is? Or do you even know who she is? How's it? This is Chop, Screenplay Prep, and the anonymity of he or she. What I'm talking about here is the reference to your characters as he or she. This isn't a video about gender politics or anything. This is simply about the continuity of your characters and who they are. There can often be confusion in reading a screenplay as to, do you mean this person or do you mean that person? This isn't so much a screenwriting rule, but more film etiquette. This isn't something you'd really understand or realize unless you'd worked on a film set. So what am I getting at here? So imagine you've got a page of screenwriting, and towards the bottom of that page you have exterior, house, night. John pulls up in his Mustang and screeches to a halt at the curbside. A lamp flickers across the lawn. He gets out and paces up toward the house. Now that finishes at the end of your page. On to the next page you have interior, house, night. He enters the room. It is empty. Light flickers in through the window. Something like this. The problem there is, the director could call cut and wrap for the day at the end of the scene whereby the Mustang pulls up outside the house. Shooting could then resume on a soundstage for the interior of the house and could be done days later. But even if it is the following day, what's likely or possible to happen is that the production assistants on set provide the necessary script for the day. So rather than actors walking around, or even crew members walking around with a thick script of 120 pages, they just have the necessary scenes for that day. Well, a scene for the interior of the house starts at the top of the page and makes reference to he walks in the house. Well, who's he? In reality, he is John, but we don't necessarily have the reference to yesterday's scene, which is the page before, to accentuate that he is John. Screenwriting etiquette would say, in my view, that whenever you start a new scene, always call out your he or she as the character name. That way you don't have any ambiguity and everybody knows who needs to be on set for that scene. Similarly, when you write an action description and you start with John, you then go into and then he does this and he does that. But every now and then, a sentence or two later, you would reiterate that it is John. So in the same way, don't go through where your action description is broken by dialogue and keep on saying he. Just remind us every now and then who he or she is. Similarly, if you've got dialogue where John is the character heading and then John says something, and then there's a line of action description below that says his hand covers his mouth, is that John because we've just heard John speak, or does the he refer to another character in the scene? So just be wary also when you follow dialogue that if you make a mention to he or she, just make sure that there's no ambiguity. And if anything, that there's already been the setup of he and she speaking, that the he is then obvious. Just a short video this week. I hope that is useful to you. Something to keep in mind. It's not necessarily something you're going to see in screenwriting rulebooks, but something to be aware of in terms of making life easier on set. You could also say or argue that a reader might put your script down because they've got to answer a phone call and then they get distracted. It could be hours later before they get back to reading your screenplay and they get to the top of that page and they've already forgotten who he is. They need to know that it is John. So another reason to do that. Okay, hope that was useful and I'll see you in the next video. If you found that video useful, please consider liking and subscribing. That will tell YouTube that I'm worth watching and ensures I can produce more educational content into the future.